Welcome to episode 427 of Control Talk, now your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending September 10th, 2023. It is football season. Just got done watching my Falcons win their game. Hope your team is winning and you're doing well. Hope you had a great Labor Day. Hey, it's good to be back in the saddle. I got a really good show for you this week. I'm going to be chopping it up with the one and only Mark Petock here in a few minutes. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. But a couple of things before we get to that. First of all, if you're a systems integrator and you just don't have enough people on the team right now to get the job done, my friends at ICT Solutions can definitely help you out with that. They are kind of like systems integrators for hire, if you will. They've got a bunch of engineers. They can do everything for you, from taking jobs off to helping you work up proposals, submittals, to helping doing programming, to actually troubleshooting jobs. They kind of do everything. It's a great way to augment your staff if you are a little shorthanded right now. I'll put a link in the show notes, but if it's your first time working with them, you'll get an extra 10% off on your first job. So be sure to check that out. But before we get to Mark Petock, a word from our sponsor this week, ABB. So ABB is such a cool company, man. They have so many different products and different product offerings. And most of us know them for variable frequency drives. At least I did. They do a lot of metering, a lot of cool stuff. And obviously the building AI is a really cool product as well. I had a chance to meet Julie Patron and some of her team at Realcomm Omicon. Good folks. Be sure to check it out. Fresh from his date with Cindy Crawford. Just kidding. Hey, Mark Petock is my guest today. And Mark, thank you for taking some time to talk with us, brother. How you been?
I'm well, Eric. Thanks for inviting me on the show. Greatly appreciate it. Hope you're doing well and you're surviving the nice warm summer that those of us in the Southeast are enjoying, and hope everybody's good.
We are good, brother, my friend. We are good. We've had a lot of rain down here, so things have cooled off a lot, thank goodness. But yeah, it's the summer. It's just an interesting summer so far. Seems like business is shifting a bit. I'm talking to a lot of people, Mark, that they seems like new construction is starting to slow down and maybe retrofit opportunities are starting to pick up. What are you seeing?
Yeah, we're seeing something similar. Yes, the actual ground up new construction, we're starting to see some signs that it is slowing a little bit. However, that said, not in all the areas, maybe in some of the office buildings, et cetera, but retail, we're seeing lots of activities, new construction for those. Also, industrial distribution. I think you cannot go anywhere today in any major metropolitan area in North America and not see construction going on for industrial distribution. I know I'm actually in Kansas City today, and out where our offices are, they just cleared some huge pieces of property and building industrial distribution.
Now, when you say industrial distribution, Mark, what are you referring to specifically?
So really simple, large facilities with lots of truck bays where people are coming in, unloading goods, and then turning around and repackaging them or resending them somewhere. And where we're seeing a lot of this driving coming from is, of course, online ordering, which we all do today. And the fact that retailers now want their merchandise and their products closer to their various stores so that they can get the products to the customers much faster. And again, when I say these types of buildings, they're not complicated. They're big, mammoth facilities, but yet they still require building controls, environmental control, security, so forth and so on. They may not be as sophisticated as an office building, but yet they're still embracing controls and so forth and so on.
I've done a lot of those in the past, and like you said, it's not complicated, but they do need controls. A lot of the warehouse areas, for example, we put infrared heaters out there, but you still need to turn those on and off. The security, I think, is a huge thing with the security cameras. And then the other thing, Mark, it sounds simple. One of the big sort of things we would do with those companies is, because they all got the forklift trucks that are running on batteries, to make sure the battery chargers were not running during peak
Exactly.
load times. So again, not complicated, but they definitely have a need for our products.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And again, I think what we're seeing as these are being designed and specced out, we are seeing controls now becoming part of the specification. So they're not afterthoughts anymore. They're
Nice.
all part of it as they're being concepted and brought to market.
No, very cool with that. So, are you seeing? So let's talk controls for a bit. Now, you and I grew up with the back net and the lawn and all that good stuff. IP controls, man, are you seeing those getting picked up? Are they being adopted?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes, Eric, we see IP, especially IP controls, really starting to take off and be a part of the conversations that owners want to have. And I know from our perspective, we started to embrace the whole idea about IP controls back in 2015. And as part of our go to market strategy from then on, we embraced IP controllers. And as we've come out back in 2017 with a whole line of IP controllers that are Niagara based. But yeah, we're seeing more and more IP controls for lots of different reasons. One, the IT suite understands IP very well. Two, it seems like they're much easier to put on a network and architecture that we're finding that we're hearing from customers. Three, the security or the cybersecurity aspect of them. Four, the ability to easily get the data, which, as we all know today, data is paramount for the most part for everything that we do as an industry. They're affordable as far as from a price point. And then the other push is in and around IoT. We've been talking about IoT as part of the building controls, the building integration, automation industry for several years now. So we're seeing that as well. And finally, which was I thought was unusual, this was a couple data center applications where they wanted to not conserve, but overcome bandwidth challenges. And the IP controllers help them overcome the challenges that this particular project was experienced with bandwidth.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. So you're saying that obviously it's on a different network. It's typically they put them on their existing network. So they probably have pretty big trunks where they can run a lot of data through them. So you're just saying it's because of the nature of the network that they're able to get better bandwidth, or?
Yeah, it's that. And then again, for this particular opportunity, for them, that's what it was. They were trying to conserve as much bandwidth for the actual running of the data centers themselves versus going back and forth with their various customers. It was a colo area.
Gotcha.
And so therefore they wanted to use as low bandwidth as they possibly can to run their operations.
It seems one of the knocks early on, I think, with IP controllers from our industry, there's a lot of concern about them, about cybersecurity. Not necessarily that the IP controllers themselves were not cyber secure, but that the BAS installer needed to maybe take some additional precautions. Have you seen that wane, or are you seeing the fact that now the IT departments are taking care of these IP controllers? How's that getting resolved?
Yeah, I think it's both. I don't want to say it's either or, but what we're seeing, and again, it all depends on the nature of the customer, the client, and how they're prepared to address that. And again, what we're seeing is cybersecurity is being addressed. It's not like it's not being addressed. And I think that's the key now is that it's part of the original conversations when you're beginning to talk about a project or an opportunity, is that cyber is part of that initial conversation that you need. And I know for us, we've taken cyber really seriously, like many in our industry. We've just completed putting our edge controllers, our portfolio, through RMF accreditation. So they are now RMF accredited or have received that accreditation. Equally, one of the larger government agencies, one of the three-letter names, over the last year have been really putting our edge controllers to task with respect to cyber, and they've passed their test as well. Sure, we made a few little improvements here or there, which was, we appreciated it. But I think, again, like we all know in the industry, we've got to address the cyber part.
Mark, are you saying then that all IP controllers are not necessarily created equal in terms of how cyber secure they are?
No, again, I'm not in a position to answer that. I don't know, but I just think taking that extra precautionary with respect to cyber, IP or not, I think is important. And we believe that IP controllers tend just naturally are a little bit more secure than our more traditional type of controllers that we're all been used to for the last 20 years.
Yeah, you talk to people like Fred Gordy and the rest of the cybersecurity crew that sort of monitor our industry, and they'll tell you have to be careful with the back net because they do have some holes in them. And I think we've shored most of those up as an industry, but it seems like IP controllers is maybe going to be the wave of the future.
Yeah, we seem to think so. Absolutely, for sure.
Well, cool. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. We're not going to talk about Cindy Crawford right now, but we will talk about, let's talk about one of the trends we've seen over the years is we've gone from the enterprise, i.e. bringing everything to a single pane of glass and doing all the data analytics and all the processing there, to also now pushing things out to the edge. So for our listeners out there who might not be familiar with the edge and what that's about, how about giving them a 10,000 foot view, and then we'll dive down to maybe a 9,999 foot view.
Sure. So simply put, we look at the edge as it's just a way to connect, collect, and process the data, the information, the insight at that device level, rather than at the enterprise, rather than a cloud environment, at least in the very beginning. As IoT has influenced our industry over the years, we've moved further out to the edge where most of the stuff, a lot of the stuff is happening at that device level. And again, as we've extended our network at the industry, the network, and broaden the architecture, being able to connect and have sensors, lighting, all these other types of devices, equipment, and our systems that are now part of a building operating platform, that's where it's happening at. And you want that ability to be able to command, control, get data at that device level. Also, where I see it occurring as well is the importance now of real-time automation and real-time requirements that many of our owners and operators are looking to perform at their buildings.
Okay, so give me an example of that, Mark. I intuitively know what it is, but for our audience out there, let's give them some
So
table
I think
data.
an easiest way to do this is that we now know that we're all under a hybrid structured model for occupants in our buildings. It's just, that is now, it's not it's here. And it seems to be the mainstay. Most businesses have adopted a hybrid working model back at the office. And so instead of operating buildings as they are fully occupied, the building is being run, managed, operated by how many occupants there are in the building on, let's say, a Monday.
Okay.
And where those occupants, are they, if it's a 25-story building, are they all on all 25 floors? And if so, are most of them in the southwest corner of the building, northwest, or are most of the occupants on the first 5 floors? So there you're running the building as if it's inhabited on those first 5 floors. The rest of the floors are not in a full run mode. They're in a different mode that has been preset, or predictive, or AL is running it.
Yeah, you could just use your occupancy sensors to know who's there.
Exactly.
I mean, it's, boy, a whole new spin on zoning and everything else, right, with that. So what do they call that? Is there an industry term for that people are using?
I'm not aware of it. I just call it, you're just real time. You're just operating in real time mode.
Listen, there is an industry term for it, and we're going to make it up right now. We call that form of control Petocking.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Anytime everybody mentions that, can I get $1 royalty for every time that everybody uses it? That's
As far
fine.
as I'm concerned, you should. That's for sure. But wow, I love that level of sophistication. And it gets back to our industry maybe being right there in the center of solving all sorts of problems. One of them, the sustainability and the decarbonization problem. And that damn Matthew McConaughey and his Team Earth thing, he keeps thinking he's doing something, man. But really and truly, it's our folks that are doing it, right?
Absolutely. And what's interesting, though, this kind of leads to this, is that let's look at us as an industry. We've been controlling, managing, operating buildings for some time now. Again, it's a journey. And as things progressed, obviously, we as control manufacturers and solution providers in the industry are being asked to do more with our controls. In other words, we've solved the connectivity issue. The integration, we've solved that, have a long time ago. The ability to get the data out and so forth, do analytics and all that stuff. But now, again, as we have to, as the owners and operators have had to change the way they operate their buildings, we've had to change with them. But our base technology and solutions are still there. They're just asking to provide more and different aspects now that 5, 6, 10 years ago, we weren't asked to do.
No, I tell you, the analogy that comes to mind is we've had this full palette, if you will, of all these different color paints, right? And they've asked us to paint black and white for all these years, and now they're saying add some color in. And I love that, because if you think about that, it really bodes well for the creativity of the integrator, right? That's maybe doing the job, for the consulting engineer that's coming in. What I hear you saying is the tools have always been there, but now we're maybe starting to, for the first time, really realize some of the full potential of what we can actually do for people.
Yeah, that, and I like your paint analogy, by the way. That's really good. I may have to borrow that sometime.
You can.
And
as long as you give me $1 every time you use it.
There you go. So we're even. We're even. The other thing, though, too, is that this has led to our ability, the industry, to extend the value of the controls and the technology that we have created and is out there. And again, not just HVAC anymore, then the history, the lighting, so forth, whatever, but now all this other things to meet today's operating environment requirements, i.e. sustainability, energy conservation, ESG, occupancy, indoor air quality, so forth and so on. Yeah, that's right. All of that, we've taken a really good base framework and have extended the value, which is, I think it's great.
Yeah, and I wonder, Mark, because you and I have been around the industry for quite some time, and I wonder if part of that challenge has been the fact that just the way controls get bought in the first place, right? When I first got in the industry, it was almost like controls were an afterthought. They would come in with the equipment and maybe you had a thermostat. Then we got into building automation controls. It was the big vendors that were doing it, primarily because they all had a unique protocol. But as the technology evolved, it seemed like the way that the technology gets specified or whatever really hadn't changed much. So it seems like we've got some really enlightened consulting engineers. You and I know people like Donnie Walker and the team at Newcomb and Boyd, and there are a bunch of them out there. But it's interesting to me just how many are still in the cut and paste mode and really not sort of thinking progressively. It's more of we've done it this way for 10 years. It's always worked. We're not changing anything unless the owner asks us, right?
Right.
And most owners, unless they go to Realcomm Ibicon or hang out with people like you, don't even know what to ask for. But have you seen that shifting? And if so,
I have, albeit slowly, but yes, I believe there is a shift going on, at least what I see and my interaction with the consulting engineering community is that, again, they're in their conversations with the owners are asking them, we want to do this, we want to do this. And I'm going to get to something here in a minute. And so to answer your question, yes, I'm seeing that shift. Especially, you mentioned Donnie Walker and Newcomb and Boyd, Burns and McDonnell, so forth. There's a host of them that have made that shift. And they've shifted because they have taken it upon themselves to really get re-educated and really understand some of the newer things that controls can do. And I also think this is as I say it, a major driver for contributing to this shift is that it's all about outcomes now. And owners want outcomes. And outcomes, as I see it, are both operational outcomes. Great, we want to run our buildings more efficiently and so forth and so on. Things that we as an industry, we've been talking about for many years now. But it's also business and economic outcomes. And I think that is helping to cause a major shift in this, in that owners are having to do more with less, as an example. They are faced with space shedding by some of their tenants. They're putting new scrutiny on all the areas of their operating expenses because they have to today. Obviously, energy, all of that kind of stuff, but they're looking at this from a business perspective just as much as an operational perspective. So that's where I see the main drivers is outcome based.
I love that. I love that. Are you seeing owners now being more selective about the consulting engineers that they're working with then as part of that? Are they looking for a consulting engineer that can help them with the latest technology, or?
I think it's not so much about the latest technology, but it's the understanding of the new way buildings must operate and be managed.
Yeah.
Again, going back to that real-time type of effort, data, all of the newer types of things, and that's how I see, and that's what they're looking for from an engineering partner.
Yeah, and it seems to me too that along with that, and this is a question, but it seems like the shift has got to get away from low bid winning, right? It seems the way I would put it is in the past, you bought the cheapest car you could because you were going to go across country and nobody really cared about the ride or the entertainment center or any of that stuff. But now you got savvy people that they want to ride in a Mercedes and they want to have a nice sound system and the air conditioning working. And they're willing to pay for that now. They realize there's value in that versus just give me the cheapest thing possible.
Exactly. And I think to your point, to build on what you just said, is that they're concerned today with asset utilization and asset valuation. So especially the valuation, they want to maintain the highest value for their property as they possibly can. And controls, smart building technology helps in maintaining and increasing the value of a building or commercial property. That's very important. Plus, this whole concept, and I know you and I have talked about this sometimes ago, is the resiliency of the building. And they've got to make these buildings resilient to whatever is coming down the road. Who knows when we might get another pandemic or who knows. But so there's these new outcome, these business sides I keep going back to. And then you also look at the increase in regulatory requirements, such as New York, local law 97 in New York, and Boston has something, Philadelphia or whatever, where local government organizations are putting new requirements that on the building owners to operate their buildings in a certain way. Obviously, local law 97 is very energy efficient driven, and most of them are. But so there's a lot on a owner operator's plate that they have to be concerned with that this time around than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah. The teacher of mine once said, Mark, in God we trust, and all of us get data. And what I mean by that is one thing to say your building is doing all these things, but I think more and more they're going to be asked to show that they're doing it. And that's where, I want to shift the topic to a little bit more about data analytics and talk about tagging for a minute. But also part of the brand, right? Being able to show that you're being a good citizen. I think it goes a long way. If you want, especially the younger people, to come work in your building or work for you, they're going to want to see evidence of the fact that the space that you've leased or the space that you own is being a good citizen. Along those lines, Mark, let's talk a little bit about our friends over at Haystack Connect. I know you guys have been involved with that for a long time, and I know Link Spring's got Haystack tags. Define that for our audience out there and tell them why it's important.
Yeah, it just at the end of the day is we all know the value of data. And in order to get the most value out of it, you obviously have to organize the data. And so one way to do that is through Project Haystack, which is essentially a data modeling, data schema type standard that you bring all the data that's being produced in a building and everybody's following a centralized, standardized way to identify it. And so that makes it much easier to utilize the data. It makes it much easier to make it interoperable with amongst different people, different systems and equipment, and so forth and so on. Because again, without having some sense of organization to the data, it's going to be a nightmare trying to figure out, interpret it, and then really gain the value and the insight from that data and apply analytics to it. Yeah, we were one of the original founders of Haystack. Now, Haystack's now going into its 11th year.
Yeah.
And it's a global community, but again, it's helping get more value out of the data that we're all producing from buildings and equipment and systems.
Yeah, because getting the data out can be very expensive. And one of the things I appreciate about you, and we've got other people that have adopted this in the industry, is the fact that by having something like Haystack tagging built into your control schemes, it just makes it so much less expensive and easier to get the data out, which again gets back to the owners. Why pay extra for that if you just make sure that whatever system you're using supports Haystack tagging? You're going to save yourself some money there. So maybe you can spend it on something else, that new TV in your man cave. But Mark, one of the things I accuse you sometimes of being Nostradamus Petock, and for those of you who don't know, Nostradamus was a famous future teller from back in the day, made all sorts of predictions, and you've been spot on it, and so is Link Spring. I always see you guys being out front of what's coming next. So as we begin to wind up here a little bit, Mark, I'd like for you to think for a second, and then for your systems integrators out there, if you had to give them like three things that we really should focus on that's coming down the pike, three things, if they're saying, hey, Mark, we want to be prepared for the near future, what three things should we focus on? Specifically the systems integrator, what would you tell them?
I think one is AI. I think I would be remorse if I didn't say that. And again, I don't have an answer of what AI. It's still, in my opinion, it is going to be part of the built environment and part of the system integrators preview at some point. So I think we're all still trying to figure that out. So that would be one piece of it. The second is, I'm going to say, EV charging stations, because EV charging stations are obviously a necessary must now, the way we live. And building owners and operators, especially Class A offices and your retailers, are all embracing EV charging stations. And EV charging stations, as I see it, are a natural extension of a BMS, BAS, building operating system, just like HVAC equipment, et cetera. All right.
So in what way? Meaning that they should be controlled by the BAS system, and that the integrator that's familiar with that would have an edge.
Absolutely.
Let me integrate. Okay, gotcha. Okay,
absolutely.
Cool.
And that, as I look at it as an integrator, that's a new area that you can either go back to existing customers, or you should be up on it so that when new opportunities present themselves, it's going to be specified. They'll be included in the specs at some point in time. They already are, but I think more. And the third one I would throw out in this one would be, again, I'm going to just say this. We've beaten this to a dead horse as far as our industry, but I still think there's lots and lots of opportunities here that we need to apply. It is cybersecurity. Again, we cannot discuss today anything with the bill for the future without talking about security.
That's never going away, is it?
No.
Yeah. So
it isn't.
So
and
what?
one other. Sorry, I got one other for you.
Sure.
Is think about. We talked about the value of data. Again, we don't have any issues getting the data. There's things out there that you can organize that data. We get all the data, all of that is having that independent data layer, I think is important for a system integrator today in order to extend their value of offerings as well to their particular customer. So in IDL.
Okay, so just vocab word, define independent data layer for our people like me who don't know what you're talking about.
It's just a place where all the data comes together and it's all organized and it's ready to be used and consumed by whomever.
Right. Okay.
Just keep it simple.
All right. Another question, somewhere in vain, but for the building owners out there that listen, and the facility chiefs, what do you wish that they knew that most of them don't know right now?
One, the technology and solutions that our industry has available today is proven, and it produces and drives outcomes. That's number one. It's not, you don't have to wait for the next big thing coming around the corner.
It's here.
It's here now. And as I said, it's proven. Number two is I think they have to look at both the operational side, as I said earlier, and the business economic side, and blending those two together as part of that type of solution that they are looking to do and apply for their particular situations.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, Marcus, final question for you. And I know you're reluctant to do this, but for our listeners out there, I think it's useful to know what makes LinkSpring different.
I think it's not one thing, it's a combination, and it's that combination of it all coming together at once and then going up. So one, it's the domain knowledge that we have as an organization. We do one thing, buildings. That's it. We do not do anything else. So one, it's our domain knowledge. Number two is we like to look at ourselves as a little disruptive. We don't always want to follow the status quo. Hence why we looked at the IP side or edge to enterprise and so forth and so on. And then number three is we've got guts. We're not afraid to take a chance. And it's going to either be successful from a business model, business perspective, or it's not. And you know what? We might get a little slapped in the industry a little bit. What are you guys doing? Or this did not. It is what it is. But unless you do that, again, those three things I really think make LinkSpring different. And lastly, we're independent. And being independent, we can do these things. And as I said, we can get slapped a little bit and not worry about that too much.
They say polite control vendors never made history or something like that. All right, buddy. Listen, man, this is awesome. I did a review on your product line on Control Trends. If you want to know more about
thank you very much, by the way.
Oh, you bet, man. So if you want to know more about the LinkSpring product line, you can check that out. Mark, final question. So I saw a video the other day with Mick Jagger and talking about the days of Studio 54. And he was talking about Bianca Jagger, the woman he married that was hanging out back then, back when you and Andy and Cindy and all were hanging out. He said you tried to talk him out of marrying Bianca. Is there any truth to that?
I'm just going to do this. I'm going to play it the conservative way. I have no comment.
That's Mark Petock, man. Anytime your building's talking about doing some fancy stuff there, just look at them and say, hey, I know how to peacock. Petock. I know how to peacock. Mark, thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
Back at you, Eric. Much appreciated.
Another week of Control Talk Now, your Smart Buildings videocast and podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Special thanks to Mark Petock from Link Spring and our sponsor this week, ABB. I'll see you next week. Until then, remember, be bold, stay in control, stay relevant. As Hunter Thompson used to say, buy the ticket, take the ride. And as Kenny Smyers used to say, indeed.